If you are still using console.log in your Node.js apps, you are missing out on the real observability. Today, I'm going to show you how to build production-grade logging pipeline using Pino, Loki, and the Grafana, and we're going to use the Fastify as a kind of backend framework. So here in this screen, we're going to use the Visual Studio Code. You can see we are opening a kind of new terminal, and this is my project directory that is called logging tutorial. So let's try to initialize one Node.js project here, which is going to be, we can say npm init, right? That's why. Here in the package.json file, we don't have any dependencies. So let's try to install a couple of dependencies quickly. So we're going to use Fastify. We can say yarn add Fastify. Fastify. Then we'll be going to use Pino and Pino Loki. Right, Pino Loki. So these are the essential libraries so far we need, right? Then what we are going to do, we need to add a couple of other dependencies as well as for supporting our project to the TypeScript, because we're going to use the TypeScript right here. So let's try to install all of these things. We can say yarn add, and we'll be going to say types. We need the node, and we can set ts node and TypeScript. And we'll be going to install as a kind of dev dependencies here. Perfect. So all those dependencies are installed right here in the dev dependencies. So let's try to remove all of these caret symbols. So we are going to use the pin version of the node. So definitely this is going to help us out to while we are going to deploy this code in the production, then it will not going to break our version. So if it is going to work in our local environment, that similar behavior we can get it in production environment. By leaving this kind of caret symbol, like we are allowing to installing, like while we are going to install all of the dependencies, then it can be upgraded to the minor version of any kind of patches for that particular library. So let's try to close everything right here. And what we are going to do, maybe we need to do a couple of more things right here. So instead of this test script, what we're going to do, we'll be going to say build, right? So let's try to do it quickly. Perfect. So these are the scripts we are going to use throughout our application. So here, let's go ahead and create a directory. So what we're going to create one directory that is going to be our source directory, src. And inside this source directory, we will be going to create a kind of minimalistic code just to make sure we just try to spin our application. Then throughout of the application, we'll be going to hit a couple of endpoints. Then those endpoints are going to produce some logs. Then we will be going to report all of the logs to our Grafana, right? And so in that case, we'll be going to create a bunch of files. So let me create all of the files inside here. We can say cd src. Then we can say that. So you might have thinking why we are just creating user service and repository and all. Definitely we'll be going to put our hands to quickly to understand, because while it comes to the logging the logs from our top level, then we'll be going to use Fastify. So Fastify is reporting the logs in different ways. So in terms of as soon as you'll be receive any kind of request, and then that particular request instance, we can attach our logger right there. So any kind of logs that is coming through the request, that is what we can just directly report to Grafana or any kind of loggers, right? But what if deep down somewhere where maybe a request is not going to be reachable, or maybe we'll be going to do some background work right there, then how we can do that one, right? So in that case, that's why we need the logger, and that's why we are to present all of these issues or present that particular scenario. I've just created this two particular layer, right? So one going to be service and the repository. All right, then let's try to add some code right here. But right before writing some code, make sure our project is configured for TypeScript. So in this case, what we are going to do, let's try to create one file here. We're going to say, let's go out from the source directory. We can say tsc -init, right? -init. So we are not going to use all of the default configurations from here. So instead of that, we're going to add some of our own code right here. We can say here, we can say compiler options, right? So compiler options. And inside the compiler options, we are going to say target, right? And the target will be ES616, we can say, right? So let's try to put it like this, right? Then definitely we can use some new version also, but let's try to use this one, so make sure everything is complied correctly. So we're going to use the module, and in this case, we can say common.js, and let's try to add all of the codes like quickly. So we're not gonna like type one by one all of this thing. Perfect. So this is our TypeScript configuration file. So here we are just like adding this root directory as a kind of source directory, this one. And we are going to, while we are going to compile our TypeScript codes, then it is going to produce one directory that is called the distribution directory. And inside this directory, we will be going to grab all of the code and we can deploy it somewhere, right? So that is the agenda of that whole configuration. Let's try to close this file here. And I'm going to add some code quickly to just like kickstart up our one very tiny Fastify server right here. So this is a very tiny Fastify server, right? So which is going to start on port 3000. As soon as it is getting started, it is going to produce some console log. And once you are going to hit the URL, right, in the root URL, then this is going to be also log that receive a request or something like that, right? Just to make sure like it is producing the logs. So let's try to kickstart the server. We can say start call, right? Now let's kickstart up the server. So from here in the package.json file, we can spin this particular line right here, right? So let's go ahead and from here, then definitely we can say yarn, we can say dev, yarn dev. Perfect. So now our server is running port 3000. So let's try to create one HTTP file from here so we can directly hit the this particular server without going to the browser. So here we are going to create one file. So make sure it's outside of the source directory. So here we can say request dot HTTP, right? And inside this request.http, right? So we can say get. Perfect. Then we can just like directly send this request. So while we are hitting this endpoint, you can see like it is producing some logs, right? But what if we're going to use this console log, then definitely this is all right, right? There are no any issues. Like we can directly we can see the logs and everything. We can debug it. Like if there are any kind of issues are happening, still we can see the logs and go ahead and check it out, right? But as soon as we are stopping our server, right, then you can see like log has gone, right? And again, if you're going to kickstart your server, all right, and the next time, then again it will going to be kind of fresh, completely new log. So that means if somehow if your server is get crashed, or maybe it's server you restarted your server, then definitely there are no way out where we can grab this kind of like debugging logs. That's why we need to find a kind of workaround where we can just preserve our logs on the runtime. If any kind of errors or anything is going to happen in our application, then at least we can preserve all of the logs to make sure we can observe it and we can fix the errors, right? So that's why what we are going to do, we'll be going to use the Grafana and the Pino Loki just to make sure we are going to produce like good amount of logs right there, and we can report it efficiently to store somewhere. So to introduce the Grafana and the Loki, let's try to make sure like we are having installation of all of the required packages. That's why at the beginning we have installed our Pino and the Pino Loki. Right? So now let's try to create one Docker file first, because right before producing the logs or reporting the logs, make sure we need to have the provision of the of Grafana and the Loki right here. So let's try to create one Docker file here. Right? So we can say Docker. This is going to be Docker compose file, Docker compose.yaml. Perfect. So in this Docker compose.yaml file, we'll be going to add some code quickly. So what we are using in this Docker compose file, as soon as we are going to run this Docker compose file, then our Grafana and Loki will be ready for consuming the logs. So you can see in the image we are using Loki image from here, Grafana Loki, all right? So this is the image version we are using. So you can use as per your convenient whatever version suits at you. So and we are exposing this port number, and Grafana and this Loki will be available in 3100 port number, right? So this is what we are mapping with the port number with our host. And this is the kind of configurations which is where we are going to store our Loki configurations, right? So this is Grafana configurations. So where we are putting some environments right here, and we are saying authentication will be anonymous. So we are not using any kind of strict authentication here. So while we'll be going to have our production environment for Grafana, then definitely we need to set up it in a separate way. So maybe I'm going to make a video where we can set up the Grafana for production environment. So this is the entry point where we are running one shell script right here. You can see these are the configurations we have added to right there. And we are pointing our URL to Loki, right? This is exactly which is we have exposed right here by running this service, right? And finally, you can see like our Grafana is exposed to 3001 because 3000 is already been occupied by our application, right? And once this Grafana going to be start, right? Then this is going to be depends on Loki. So Loki will be going to kickstart first, but then Grafana will be start accordingly. Perfect. So now let's go ahead and run this Docker Compose file. But right before running this Docker Compose file, make sure you have installed Docker Desktop in your machine, right? So you can find the links of the Docker Desktop in the description of this video, right? So let's try to run this Docker Compose file. So what we are going to do, we'll be going to say Docker Compose up, right? So we're not going to run in this Docker Compose file in the background. You can run on the background by using the touch mode, by providing this -d the parameter, right? So let's try to run this Docker Compose file. So you can see now it is getting started. It has already created two containers, one for Loki and another one for Grafana, right? So let's try to split this terminal so we can side by side run our application also, right? So I'm gonna like make it a little bit, squeezing a little bit like this way. So now let's try to configure our Fastify server. So here, while we will be going to produce this kind of logs, it should supposed to report to directly to the Grafana, all right, using Loki. So what we are going to do inside this Fastify the server, let's try to configure it. We're going to say logger, right? And logger. And inside this logger object, we'll be going to put label as a kind of default info. And inside this, we'll be going to put we'll be going to configure our transport. Transport, right? So inside transport, right? Transport will be a form of object, and inside transport we can use the target, right? So we're not going to use the any kind of like other target. We will be going to say target. And target will be our Pino Loki, Pino Loki. That is already we have installed right here in the package.json file. You can see this Pino Loki. This is the exact package we need to use right here. Right. So now let's try to add a couple of options right here. We'll be going to say options, and inside these options, we'll be going to say batching, right? Batching will be true. Then we'll be going to say interval. So what is the interval? We'll be going to push the logs, right? So we'll be going to pinging to Loki. That is we are going to say, and then we'll be going to say here host, right? So host will be our local host. We can say HTTP localhost 3100, the Loki URL that is we will be going to use right here. Then finally we need to use the labels. So we can say Fastify. So we can directly say our logging tutorial. Right. Perfect. So these are the configurations going to be needed for reporting the logs to the Loki, right? So this is the exact URL of the Loki that is you can see right here. Loki is exposing right here 3100, right? So that is what we are adding right there. Perfect. So now let's go ahead and alter the request logs. So instead of console logs, we will be going to use something else. We can say request and log. And you might have thinking where this request log is coming from. Fastify already giving the logging opportunity where you can directly log. Instead of console log, you can directly use the Fastify log also. But you can see the Fastify logs are it's enticed to directly to request objects, right? So here's the thing, like that's why we have just created repository and service layer as well as to access all of this log outside of the request. So while we'll be going to request this particular thing, then definitely it's going to be a log from here, right? So let's try to have a quick check right there, but we need to report one more thing. This is going to be like server. We can say get error, where we'll be going to put some kind of like message maybe. While we'll be hitting this particular endpoint, then it's supposed to log some kind of fake error. So this is a kind of simulated error to test with Grafana. Perfect, cool. So now let's go ahead and just like kickstart of our application, right? So here we can say yarn dev. So now our application is started, right? So let's go ahead and hit a couple of times right there, right? Request here. Maybe we are going to open one more. It's going to be error. Perfect. So now let's try to hit this particular request. we can say here and send this request, right? You can see it says the hello Fastify, and this one maybe let's try to hit this request also from here. So it says like internal server error, but where we can see these errors, right? So here we cannot see all of these errors right there. These errors exactly, it's supposed to log in our Grafana, right? So in this case, let's try to open our Grafana portal right there. Let's try to check it out where these logs are gone exactly, right? So where these logs are reported, right? To check these logs, what we need to do, we need to go to our Grafana. So Grafana, where we can find it out, if you go to this Docker Compose file, you can see this is the port number exactly we are being used, right? 3001. So let's go to this port number in the browser. We can say localhost 3001, right? So you can see this is the Grafana portal exactly we are running from our Docker Compose file. And if you click on this hamburger menu, and you can see there's a kind of explore options are there. So once you click on the explore, then you're supposed to see this kind of query options right there, right? So we can find all of the logs by query also, or we can use the application. So you can see like, we have a couple of things by default it is there. That is called app, hostname, and label. So we are going to use the app. And inside this app, the app name that is we have already been configured right here. If you go to index.ts file, let's try to close this one, maybe this one as well as. This particular app name exactly using by this label, you should supposed to find it, right? So you can add here the team name also, right? So where maybe you can say backend or front end or etc. Then you should supposed to get as a kind of team label right here also, right? So in this case, you can see we have our application name, right? Let's try to select this one, and we can select the label also. So what from the label of the logs we can find it out. So far we have just reported info and error. That's why we can see by default these two labels. And as much as labels, you can just push it from your application based on like your requirement. It can be debug, it can be error, it can be info, right? So anything, right? So we are not going to be interested in like on one particular level. So a level of error. So we are interested to find it out all of the errors. So here you can find the time frame also. Whatever the times users want to see the logs, then just like put the time range right there. So let's try to run the query here. So can you see like it is just like reporting a couple of errors right there. So you can see this is the error exactly which is we are simulating from our application, and this is the error this is the some of the other logs that is we have while we are hitting our application, then it is reporting. And you can see all of these logs in JSON format also. So you can pdify the JSON right here, right, by clicking this one. You can see this is really cool, right? So you can find it out all of the errors. Let's say I just want to see one of the errors from here, right? Then what we are going to do, we'll be going to put it just like only labels here. Let's go here and put the label here, and you can find it out all of the errors. Run the query. Can you see we have only one error, right? So this is the way we can directly find it out all of the errors rather than using console.log. We can use the dedicated log by using Fastify, right? Or maybe you can use the custom logger also. That is what we are going to implement right now. So you can see these are the two endpoints are working perfectly okay, right? So maybe we can just like utilize this one as also server.log, then maybe info, right? And similar, we can just like you replace this one also, server log error, right? So now this is working well. But what if we need to use inside somewhere, let's go to introduce some of the code in the router also, right? So here in the routes, let's try to add some code quickly. So we can say export. Perfect. So now this routes, we will be going to add it right here. So let's try to register this routes right here. We can say here, await users, not await exactly. We are not required any kind of the asynchronous stuff right there, unless you are performing something else. But I think this one is right. So we can directly use like this. We can say user routes server. Perfect. So now let's go ahead and restart our application. So this time what we are going to do, we'll be going to hit this particular endpoint. This is going to be again the user endpoint. So let's try to use like users, right? So let's try to send a kind of request to there. You can see like we are receiving the request of users Alice, Bob, and Charlie. All of these users are reported. Let's go to Grafana and let's check it out, like whether we are receiving all of the logs. So this time I'm only interested in info. Let's try to run the query. And if you can see the logs right there, can you see like we're having already URL, this particular the call is already going through, right? and these are already log error the previous logs, but this is the correct one, right? So users. Perfect. So can you say like this is the way we can directly report the logs from the request itself. So here also again you can see in the routes also we are using the request log. But what if like if we need to access these logs in the down the way or somewhere? So that's why let's go to user service and let's try to create a couple of things right here. We are going to write some code just to create a kind of very quick user service class. You can say. And here also we are using this log. This is which is we are going to pass it on from our routes, right? So let's try to go to our routes here and where we can just create this service here also. So let's try to create this service quickly and pass it on. We can say instead of this logs, maybe we can say directly, let's say const service. Service will be new user service, right? Then we'll be going to use this the Fastify instance logger as a logger, and we can directly call this get users, right? So now we can just return all of the users right there. This is really cool, clean and cool. And now this is all right, right? There are no any kind of like outside loggers, but still you can see like inside the user service also we are using this request logger. But what if we need to use the repository right here? Let's say let's go to user repository, user service. Maybe here we are using the repository. Let's try to pass the repository also. Let's say repo will be our user repository. So we don't have any repository. Let's try to create one very quickly, right? And we'll be returning all of the users from there. And here we don't want to pass all of the loggers down the way to the repository. Let's say here in the user repository we need to log the errors also. Then how we can do that? First of all, let's try to hook it up this user repository here. We can say user repository, right? And yeah, we can say private also, private, and this is going to be like this repo get user. Definitely this is, we can say fetch user from repo user repo and reporting logs from user service, right? Then here we need to just to create the repository also. Let's try to create our repository. Calls the user repo will be new user repository. Perfect. So this repository we can just pass it on. Now our users, now this particular handler is okay, right? So where we are if we are going to call our users, then we'll be going to create our repository and we are passing it on. Maybe we can just move it to here also. Then if we have more repository, then maybe put it right there, right? So this is going to be like more efficient to utilize, like not only for this particular handler, maybe we can utilize for the rest of our handlers. Now let's go here in the repository. Somehow we need to use this logger, the logger also here. Where in the repository label we don't want to pass our Fastify loggers right there. Then this logger, right? That's why actually we created this file, right? So let's try to add some code quickly to create a kind of standalone logger. So in this case we can say import Pino, right? Pino from Pino. So this is going to be a kind of worker component which is we've just created in outside. Or you can that is not necessary. You need to just put it right there also. Or we can directly remove this one also. That's not a problem. Even you can put the team names. That's completely up to you. So now this logger also is supposed to report the logs right there. So let's try to use this logger right here. So we can say here logger.info, right? So we can say fetching all users from the repository, reporting loggers from the user repository using standalone logger, right? Standalone logger. Cool. Now let's try to go ahead and kickstart our application once again, right? Unable to Pino PD, right? So somehow we have used the Pino PD somewhere. Let's go ahead and this is not Pino PD, it's a Pino Loki, right? My bad. Right? Cool. So there are no any errors. So we can see like our application is going through. So this time again we are going to hit our the same endpoint. You can see it is still giving the response. Now let's go to our Grafana here. Let's try to run the applications, like refresh this query again. So you can see right now, still, it is reporting all of the errors. So you can see fetching all the users from user repository, reporting logs from the user repository using standalone logger. And this one is from like fetching user from the user reporting logs from the user service. I know, like, while I'm gonna publish this video, definitely you might have questions like, hey Jay, definitely we know how to now from Fastify standpoint, like, we can directly use this request object, or maybe we can use this Fastify instance right there to log this particular thing right there, right? But what if, like, if we need to log these things like standalone way, how we can do that one? So that's why I have just introduced this repository and service, all of this stuff, to show you how we can report logs from there also, right? Cool. Isn't it a kind of cool things right there to log all of this stuff? Definitely. So this is the way in the production version. While it comes to the professionally, you need to, like, report your observability stuff to make sure like your application is not, even if your application is breaking it down, then you can quickly go to Grafana and you can write some query. Let's say in my case, if I need to search for, let's say, standalone, right? Standalone, I can find it out. Can you see, like, I have just like put it right here as a query, line contained standalone, then you can find that particular errors from there, right? So at any point of time, if your application is breaking down or giving some kind of error, directly you can go to Grafana and you can check it out, all of these logs right there. If this is leveled up your Node.js skills, subscribe our channel for more backend engineering tutorials and visit our online learning portal codej.com, where you can find a lot of free courses right there. Thank you. See you in another tutorials.